Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My fabulous co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour over 3 years ago so he could, see people and read each other's stories, which are some of the best things in life, people and stories. And it's been so much fun. We've just been back every Wednesday ever since. And Story Hour is now made possible by an SFWA Givers Fund grant. So thank you very much, SIFWA, for keeping Story Hour going and letting me feel like I'm on NPR. Welcome back to those of you returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two wonderful writers reading for some favorite nonprofits. Tonight's wonderful writer-readers are C.S.E Cooney and Carlos Hernandez. If you can, please consider donating to tonight's featured nonprofits, Upstart Creatures and JDRF. C.S.E Cooney is reading for Upstart Creatures. Upstart Creatures is a diverse company of extraordinary artists that welcomes audiences to metaphysical feasts. Free for all, these events nurture and nourish a sense of community, feeding body and soul by combining theater with a mouth-watering menu prepared and served by the artists themselves. A guaranteed once-in-a-lifetime experience made possible by the generosity of donors and participating artists. You can learn more at upstartcreatures.com. Carlos Hernandez is reading for JDRF, which a long time ago was the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, and somewhat more recently in history was the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. But now, since everything's just type 1, instead of trying to break it out by age, because that's not really relevant, they're just JDRF. JDRF's mission is to find a cure for type 1 diabetes and its complications through the support of research. Every dollar directed to this critical research comes from donors like you. Your generosity makes real progress possible and propels us toward a goal of a world without T1D. You can learn more at jdrf.org. I'd also like to put in a plug from Story Hour specifically. We're still very concerned about the WGA strike. We like writers to have fair working conditions. All the writers here are volunteering their time, and we love that, and we love them for that, but we don't expect anybody to do that as a full-time job. So please be aware that the Entertainment Community Fund, which started over a century ago as the Actors Fund, provides a safety net and a strike fund for those performing art and entertainment professionals, including the striking writers from the WGA. That's at entertainmentcommunity.org. Hello, everyone. And if you are here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It is nice for us to see your faces. Hi, I see you. Your light is very, very blue. And chime in on the text chat if you like. We're all friendly. If you're joining us on Facebook, we are so happy to have you, and we're not monitoring you very closely. You're kind of the big kids table right now, so you behave, okay? And with that, we can move on to our readings. Our first reader tonight is Carlos Hernandez. Carlos Hernandez is the author of the Purple Prey award-winning Sal and Gabby Break the Universe, as well as its sequel, Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe, and the short story collection, The Assimilated Cuban's Guide to Quantum Santeria. He is also a CUNY Associate Professor of English at BMCC and the Graduate Center, as well as a game writer and designer, and now a writer for Marvel Comics, which I think is pretty cool. Find him on socials at Write, Teach, Play. Carlos, welcome.
Well, thanks so much for having us back. Both Claire and I are super excited to be here. Shall I dive right in?
Please, we're all super excited right now.
Right, so both Claire and I are going to be reading from stories that were published in Rogue Artists. This was an anthology that came out last year in association with the Origins Game Conference, where they have a writer's track for people who are interested in SFF to learn a little bit about how to get into writing SFF. So they publish an anthology every year from the working writers that are there giving workshops. And my story and Claire's are both about artists who are living on the fringe in some way, either in a fantasy or science fiction setting. So the story I have for you today, friends, is called The New Pointillist Manifesto. 1. The point was to give every last person on Earth the power to shape reality. That was how the advertising copy read anyway. The press releases from Chimp to Data, the speeches from the government officials on the take who signed off on it. From thin air, said musician slash producer slash scandal maestro Roachclip in the most famous commercial for Narnia, leveraging every last tooth in his chromatoplate smile. Everyone will be able to shape objects out of nothing, tap into the cloud and its wealth of information, work anywhere in the world, and join the largest entertainment platform humanity has ever known, 24/7, all for free. Welcome to the future, where reality is only limited by the power of your imagination. No one believed Roachclip, of course, just another celebrity grabbing their bag at 1459. Yet, somehow, 400 million people had heard enough about Narnia to sign up for it in the first month. 2 years later, Narnia had nearly 5 billion users worldwide. 5 years after that, the United Nations passed a resolution declaring access to Narnia a human right. The ability to control the countless nanites floating in the air around you, allowing you to shape them into tools that would last about as long as a workday, so long as your Narnia account was in good standing. Access to the universal library of human knowledge known as Web 6.0, to monitor the recondite workings of your organs as easily as daydreaming. Bid for jobs anywhere on the planet. Very important, since all jobs were part of the gig economy now. Widen the scope and breadth of your senses until you found yourself looking down on Earth from 35,000 feet and could see for yourself how tiny and insignificant you were by putting your hopes and dreams into geographically swallowed relief. All these features were declared by the UN by unanimous vote essential to the modern human condition. Your human dignity was being insulted if you too could not sign up for a free account with Narnia. Everyone should be able to exercise control over reality via the nanotechnological medium that was now as ubiquitous as air. The world, after so many generations of useless fantasizing, was really and truly magical now. Now, we were all wizards. 15 years after Narnia ended its long beta, having an account became opt-out only in every country in the world. Ever after, every first breath that every baby in the world took was laden with so many chimp to data nanites, the number might as well have been infinite. 2. The point, of course, was not to give every last one of the 18.6 billion persons on Earth the power to shape reality. Reality must be agreed upon, after all, lest the world collapse in a cataclysm of 18.6 billion competing hot takes. There must needs be a hierarchy. Some people shouldn't have information. Some people needed to have the ability to override, overwrite, undo what others did. Some people's searches needed to be blocked and their accounts flagged for having searched certain search terms. Some people needed the power to disempower those who needed disempowering. Wealth decided. Wealth has always decided the distribution of power. Narnia was free to access and use, sure, but thousands of tiers of premiums accounts, add-on abilities, features, skins, macros, licenses, and signature services granted special privileges for those who could afford them. Some police officers, for instance, had the ability to manifest firearms out of thin air, ranging from a simple Glock to a 22K Hornet rifle with a muzzle velocity of 2,445 feet per second and an effective range of 240 yards, but only if their precincts could afford the law enforcement deluxe tier. Most units had to settle for less expensive packages, as the law enforcement deluxe tier ran 541 CNY per officer per month. However, officers could upgrade themselves individually to a law enforcement deluxe package, and often did, via crowdfunding campaigns. And since supporting a nano-powerful cop carried all sorts of advantages for anyone who expected a higher than average level of interaction with law enforcement, crowdfunding officers were seldom short of backers. But you didn't have to be in law enforcement to enjoy all the deadly benefits of the law enforcement deluxe package. Any rich private citizen could upgrade themselves, as long as the local government allowed it. Generally speaking, governments did. It was better for freedom and for the taxes they collected from Narnia to punish offenders after the fact than to prevent preventable tragedies. 3. The point, really, was to give everyone the illusion of power. In a series of leaked documents, which unambiguously exposed the absolute corruption of chimp-to-data executives and which had absolutely no consequences for either said executives or the company, the world learned of the, quote, Hotspur strategy of building a resilient, ever-growing, ever-profitable user base. Hotspur, you'll remember from your Shakespeare, is brash, opinionated, hot-headed, not a bad guy, but not nearly as good as he thinks he is, either as a fighter or a lover, and positively useless as a thinker. He's a, spoiler alert, a dead man by the end of the play, a victim of his own miscalculations and overestimations. Fitzhal says some nice things over his corpse. When Hotspur's body did contain a spirit, a kingdom for it was too small a bound. According to the leaked documents, chimp-to-data execs saw themselves as noble Prince Hals and the rest of humanity as a legion of headstrong Hotspurs. Let them mouth off, cast insults, win useless victories of wit on social media, often against bots who were specifically designed to get dunked on by you and make you feel good about yourself. Let them complain and threaten, said the execs. Let them protest and plot. Give them the illusion that they have control of their destiny. Use freedom of expression as a loss leader. Chimp-to-data did not need to slay their Hotspurs in single combat. Single combat? It's for suckers. Hotspur, you see, valued principles over money. That was his true fatal flaw, the one that would keep him forever disempowered. Prince Hal would have done much better to drain Hotspur's coffers and max out his credit cards, keep him forever in debt. See, that is the lesson of dragons. For all their physical prowess, their real power lay in the hordes they slept on. That is why in Narnia you could know free of charge that the pain in your left side is indeed cancerous. You can learn exactly what type of cancer, what the prognosis is, how it might be treated had one the wherewithal, and more or less how long you had to live if you did not have the wherewithal, all without paying a cent. You would also learn, you had to learn, the targeted advertising that knew you had cancer wouldn't not let you learn that there might be ways to use Narnia's nanotechnology to cure your cancer. Your visual and audio overlays will become a cataract of cancer ads inundating your virtual existence, which is to say your entire existence. For when were you not logged into Narnia? You had no choice but to know that all of Narnia's life-saving technology could be yours for a mere 2,199 CNY a month. Out of the 18.6 billion people on Earth, approximately 1.3 billion could somehow swing 2,199 CNY a month. The remaining 17.9 billion, well, they would have to take their chances with whatever medicines they could afford, relying on whatever imperfect treatment they trusted most. But whether or not they could afford to do anything, they would know how the disease progressed daily, hourly, moment to moment. With Narnia, you knew so much about everything and could do so little about anything. And whatever vitiated effect you could have in the world could be overridden in an instant by an overeager community standards bot who would time you out of Narnia from work, from school, entertainment, access to knowledge, access to your own body, life, for an algorithmically generated period of time that the algorithmically controlled community standards bot determined was fair, or you paid the fine. Whatever effort you took to influence the world was by design impermanent, mutable, instantly delible, and most definitely recorded and noted as part of your user profile, which was more importantly you than the ego you carried in your meat. Or it was, until the new Pointilists offered another way. 4. A side point that turns out to be the entire point. Humanity has always used technologies before it understood the consequences of them. Take, for instance, quantum storage. Every nanite is an invisible floating qubit, holding information in a possibility space of outcomes yet to be determined. Nanites network with each other both locally and across space and time, expanding the repertoire of what might be. Theoretical outcomes multiplying ad infinitum, a cosmos of what ifs added after every tick of a clock. All of this knowledge, all of this potential entangled and pre-conceptualized, just waiting for a mind, an opinionated, desirous, entangled, and Hotspur-like raging mind to step in and transform a superpositional notion into a dream come true. Chimp to data thought they could limit access to this cubical wonderland through money. But money is a construct of information. And information is the multiverse's ultimate currency. Unlike quotidian currencies, however, information does not rely on a principle of scarcity. Quite the opposite. Information is the only weapon ever created against entropy. The purpose of information is to create more information, as that is the only way to forestall a multiversal end to everything. Narnia made it possible for individual minds to access information through a frame that, though cartoonish, was preferable to ontological truth, that is, virtual reality. It further created, via nanites, a perfect bridge between the virtual and the bodily. Now, the difference between a thought and a reality, a vision and an ontological truth, was limited only by the materials at hand, plus Newtonian laws, plus quantum interactions, blah, blah, blah. The point is, for a short time in human history, filthy lucre didn't work. With breathtaking hubris, Narnia tried to use puny human money to control what is literally the currency of all existence, capital I, information. They failed. Well, they will fail, thanks to us, the new Pointilists, and with your help. 5. Just a quick apology. My French sucks. Georges-Pierre Seurat, 1859 to 1891, is widely regarded as the world's premier practitioner of that style of art. Historians term pointillism. His world famous A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte kicked off the Neo-Impressionism movement and ushered in a new understanding of how the eye makes sense of color, contrast, shape, texture, and light. We members of the new Pointilists revere Seurat as the saint of synecdoche, the master of the metonym, the god of the gestalt. From him, we learn the infinite value of a point. A point, mathematically speaking, has no length or width or height. It is a coordinate non-space that has no real-world corollary. When in geometry class we drew a punctus on a Cartesian plane, we are always by definition drawing it infinitely too large. It's a useful way to help us visualize what is conceptually happening, but it's at best a model, at worst an illusion. But geometry is to quantum mechanics as an eyeball is to eyesight. The error that proved fatal to Chimp-to-Data's dreams of world domination is that they took their definition of a point from mathematics. They should have taken it from art. As we learn from Seurat, a point very much exists. It has mass and is perceptible as a speck of color on a canvas. Color, we learn from Seurat, is mutable, unstable, a shifting, scintillating thing. Color depends on what other colors are near it. That means any color is more than one color. Every dot in a work of pointillism is also all the dots in its proximity, square dancing riotously together, fueled by moonshine and a wild demonic fiddle. Look, a pointillist dot is a kibit, and kibits hold untold possibilities. In a great work of pointillism, every dot becomes the entire painting because there is no extracting a dot from its dance with the other dots that have together created a unified image before you. A work of pointillism is always a million works of pointillism all at once, an explosion of paintings hurtling toward the eye, fusillading you with the immensity of what it is to have a thinking mind that can organize seemingly random radiation into knowable nouns. You are a work of pointillism. This is not a metaphor. Your points are not oils on canvas. Yours are nanites. Those nanites have been governing your reality, rewriting your body, assigning you a societal value based on the proprietary algorithms that are protected under the law as trade secrets. More importantly, they have limited your agency in the world, dictating the limits of your creations. But even as they were describing your limits, you were filling them with the infinite possibilities of your imagination. You imparted to them your preferences and predilections, your tastes, your rules, your shortcuts and life hacks, your means of getting through the day. The nanites within you were slowly soaked through by your soul. And now that your soul is in them, there's no getting it out, no matter how much Chimp-to-Data would like to. And whatever has your soul within it is yours. All you have to do is decide that henceforth, you will govern all that would presume to house your soul. 6. New pointillism, like any art, requires tremendous rigor. You have made it here to this manifesto. You found us. That means you already have what it takes. You are centered enough, uncontrollably imaginative, fuming like Hotspur on the field of battle. The rest is practice. Do not start small. Too many teachers tell students to start small, but all art is the expression of the soul, and the soul is bigger than anything that can exist through the vehicle of matter, so start big. Attempt with all the earnestness and all the force of your will to make yourself into a god. Whatever a god is to you. Lightning from fingertips, sudden tempests, auguries of the future, resurrection of the dead. Fellow new pointillist, you will fail. Of course you will fail. Art requires rigor. I just said that. From failure, your godliness will grow. You will learn the intricacies of nanites, your new medium. Nanites, you will find, are as willful and wanton as minnows in a lake. Do not try to govern the minnows. Be the lake. The minnows will react to their environment. Govern them not through fiat nor force. You are their world. Change the environment within they wander, and they will adapt and become what is required to flourish in that environment. There will never be a time when your medium will always obey you. Look, would you want it to? Nanites are quantum. They are strange and charmed and taken together spooky. Because they are haunted, they can be haunted. It is the job of every artist to haunt their medium. You, new pointillists, must haunt the nanites that haunt you. With practice, Nanarnia's tier levels will become less of a barrier to you. Soon, you will pay less and less for access, and then one day, nothing. Meanwhile, your command over the N ocean will rival increasing levels of authority. There are new pointillists out there right now who have the clearance of presidents, even though they have been cleared by no one save themselves. They have saved themselves. Make good art, new pointillist. Art is good when it expands infinity. Greed adores scarcity. Good art attacks greed. Use your art to de-prescribe the possible. We cannot wait to see the mark you will leave on reality's canvas. And don't forget to sign your work. Pseudonymously, we don't want you to get caught, but sign it. History needs to know who to thank. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, that was awesome. I think that you've just named several bands, albums, and books. Hope you don't mind.
I'm gonna go see the new Pointillist Manifesto tonight, and PM.
Thank you so much, everybody. It is so fun. I'd never written a creative manifesto before, so that was like the artistic challenge I gave myself for that story, and just it's really fun to write a manifesto. I heartily endorse it.
It's very voicey for sure. Well, in between the two readers, we'd like to take just a moment to ingest the nanites of the first story, integrate them into ourselves, and prepare for the next one.
More red, more green, more beer.
Do you know that it's Sunday in the Park with George?
By
Right?
Stephen Sondheim. That's how I know about Surratt. I know Surratt via musical theater, but it's good stuff. He knows it because he was almost an art history major, as he likes to say.
I lived in Chicago for a year, and so one thing that everybody who lives in Chicago wants to do at least several times a day, but usually just once a year, is go in and look at Sunday in the Park, because when you can get right in front of it, you get a feeling of how incredibly big it is and how made up of tiny, tiny things it is. And it just gives you such feelings about your place in the universe, that you are big and you are tiny. It's really something to be in front of. Everyone, that was Carlos Hernandez. And our next reader tonight is C.S.E Cooney. C.S.E Cooney is the World Fantasy Award-winning author of Bone Swans stories. Other books include The Twice Drowned Saint, Saint Death's Daughter, Dark Breakers, and Desdemona and the Deep. Forthcoming from Outland Entertainment is Negocios Infernales, a tabletop RPG she co-designed with her husband, Carlos Hernandez. And what do you have for us tonight?
So in Rogue Artists, the story is called Catharsis. And that's important to remember at the end of the story, that the story is called Catharsis. I know it's harder when you're not reading it to keep all such things in your head. Both Carlos and I, for these stories, for Negocios Infernales, the game we co-designed, the main mechanic is a deck of cards. They're kind of like tarot, but they're all new images. They're nothing you've seen before. And each of them has a quote on it. And I was just, while you were reading your manifesto, I realized one of the cards you must have drawn is a card that says every discovery expands infinity. And he says art expands infinity. And I immediately had a flashback to, so sometimes we use the cards when we're writing we draw cards for inspiration completely separate from the game, and we use the art or the quote or something to prod us to the next level of story. And for this one, Catharsis, as we're finalizing the rule book for Negocios Infernales, we did a playthrough of the whole game that runs side by side in the rules so that you could see how the rules apply. And you have a column. And one of the ideas we came up with in that playthrough for Negocios Infernales was the seed of this story that is here. So when I was reading the rule, I'm like, oh yeah, that's when it started, that story. And then it turned into that goofy thing that was like a goofy, funny role play that just got very wild, turns into a very different kind of story when you kind of sit down and think about it. So that's my introduction, but Catharsis. Content warning for violence and some language. Last night, there was a priest at the box office, not doing anything, not standing in line, not even standing across the line at the other side of the picket, ringing a bell, proclaiming the wrath of La Diosa, wearing one of those daunting tabards embroidered with the two swords, one short, one long, silver and gold for the two moons, plata, the little moon, oro, the big moon, and glaring. No, this priest was just standing there, arms folded, still face, plain clothes. But you can always tell a priest by her tattoos and the two enameled hairpins that double as throwing knives when loosened from their plaited knots. Her presence was enough to thin the line in front of the warehouse-turned-theater. But not all Espadans fear the priests of La Familia de la Diosa these days. Some of the queue scowled openly at her. Others drew up hoods or pulled hats lower or loosened their hair so that it fell like lace over their faces. But the priest said nothing, wrote nothing down, just watched. After I admitted the last person in my line, I collected my money box and went in after them, shutting the door and locking it. Locked eyes with her first, though. Couldn't read a thing in the priest's stone still features. Distracted, maybe, by her tattoos. The right side of her face split with a vertical golden slash, the left side with a shorter silver one. They marked her as an interrogator. Maybe she nodded at me a little. I closed the door too fast to be sure. Last year, when the queen made her abrupt volte-face regarding her one nation, one goddess policy, we were all too shocked and weary to trust it. After all, who changes their minds in a night? And what was to stop her from changing it back? Pass all those old laws anew, insisting that we worship according to her decree or be tried as heretics. No, release from that fear is not an overnight endeavor. But months passed. The number of priests policing our streets began evaporating like fog at sunny noon. Something inside us began to thaw. And by us, I mean the atheists, agnostics, and religious minorities of Espada, and us actors, of course. Actors may worship all kinds of gods, or none at all, but even the saint-sworn, icon-wearing, sacred well-sipping goddess lovers among us still risked arrest merely for existing because, see, we were actors, and the priests of La Familia had it out for us. At least now they had it out for us without the benefit of the Queen's explicit endorsement. From what I could tell, the religious of La Familia expressed a range of reactions to that change, from relief to chagrin to livid with the bruise of rage. But despite the crushing pressures brought to bear upon her from some pretty mighty folks in some pretty holy mantles, the Queen was still showing no sign of returning to her previous leanings. It was an improvement, I thought. While it lasted, it wasn't till a few months ago when the public gallows were finally broken down in La Plaza de la Fe and the coal circles swept clean and the various mutilated effigies buried in the midden that Yasmin judged it safe enough to bring Teatro Milagro back to the surface. We'd been operating in secret in cellars and sewers for several years by then. Underground street theater, you know? But even before our profession was criminalized, we were by no means high society performance artists. I myself caught the theater bug when a raggedy troupe of traveling actors stopped by our little farming village with their puppets and masks. I was 4 years old, Mama and Papa said, and I kept pointing to the painted wagons and insisting, I want to live there. Yasmin had been a theater professor, not here, of course. Espada universities did not offer degrees in the arts. She came to Espada when our troubles began, believing that trouble was the true time for theater. She set up her workshop in the slums. She could have lived in a much nicer neighborhood with linden trees and paving stones and actual gutters, but I'm glad she didn't. The slums are where I met her. Me busking on the streets with a few friends, doing one of our song story cycles for petty change. Song stories. For lack of a better word, and there was one, Yasmin assured us later, though to be fair, when translated out of its original language, it pretty much still meant song stories. That's what we called the old ballads we'd repurposed into one unified narrative line. We threaded them together with patter and dialogue, differentiating the multiple characters we each played by moving into exaggerated postures, modulating our voices and suggesting costume changes, a red ribbon, a white glove, a black domino, a blue girdle, a skeleton key. Yasmin stood across the street watching us till we'd run through the cycle 3 times, a good 2 hours, then came over and started asking questions. She also made a few suggestions. Some of us took instant umbrage, but some of us, me, recognized her thing as the thing that would make our thing better. There were words for all these things, but I didn't know them at the time. Director, deviser, the outside eye. Yasmin was the element I didn't know we'd been missing. Since then, we'd diverged and diversified as a troupe, but always it was me and Yasmin at the center, improvising and codifying, composing and improvising. When things got really bad in Espada, when the coal circles smoldered day and night and the gallows ropes creaked even when no wind blew, Yasmin and I, and eventually Jime and Alejandro and Luz and Amir and Guillermo and Javier went underground and rehearsed our latest works in the dark. When shit goes down, we go up, said Yasmin, but she meant artistically, not literally. Although sometimes we rehearsed in attics too when we could borrow one. Teatro Milagro, we were now calling ourselves, after cycling through as many names as auxiliary ensemble members. We were in the mood for miracles. The big one, especially, that once turned, the Queen's mind would not turn back. About that, last year, around about the time she granted her first general pardon to all prisoners convicted on charges of heresy, gossip was just starting to circulate about a royal marriage. Could be that's what did it. Not all countries believe as the Espadan majority does. It would look strange to go and marry someone who believes in something you've made a crime in your own streets. Our neighbors to the east worship something they call La Voces de las Estrellas, a collective entity of immortals that views us humans as embryonic consciousnesses, or as an ex-lover, an Easterner of Mil Fuegos, the greatest metropolis of Primavera, once explained as barely sentient bread dough. The islanders of Mariposas to the south don't so much worship as befriend the little spirits who live amongst them. La Familia de la Diosa calls them devils. And do not ask me to number the deities of Northmost Piedra because they are legion. Whatever the source of the miracle, be it economics or expedience, it brought the nationhead of Espada to her senses, at least for now. And for now, our newly legalized Teatro Milagro meant to put on a show. Yasmin claims to have thought up the name Teatro Milagro, but I remember suggesting it about 3 weeks before she did, and my idea being dismissed at the time, only later to emerge as her own. Yasmin does not always process in mud time, as she calls moment-to-moment reality. It takes her a while to digest some new thoughts in full. Often when she does, she's made it wholly her own, no matter the origin. But that, my friends, is the nature of collaboration. We must remain fluid and flexible. When we cannot anymore, we must come down at last. When we come down at last to our own inner steel, we must remember to swing out with a flat end first, not the point. And remember, And really, whenever I remind Yasmin about my part in a project, especially if it's my soul stuff at the very heart of it, she'll laugh and say, "That's right, Vega, I forgot. We'll put your name down as first among creators." And it's all done so good-naturedly that I enter into our next collaboration with no compunctions. I don't remember which one of us thought up the idea of La Cámara de los Sombras, not one of mine or even Yasmin's. I think it was one of those group thoughts that seem to form in the air like a new note of music hovering above a harmonizing chorus. Our troupe is so tight-knit now, this happens more often than not. I put it all down to our mask work. I first noticed this cohesion when we were devising our Los Lobos piece back when we were still in hiding. The audience would cram in to see us, all word of mouth. We pasted no broadsides in those days, and sit among the root storage and dusty wine bottles right there on the dirt floor and watch us actors do nothing but loll about. But we lolled about as wolves. We wore wolf masks and did wolf things, hunt lazy beavers, educate our sprightly pups, care for our sick and injured, mourn the passing of our elders. We would pretend that individuals from our audience were tree stumps to be marked, carcasses to be sniffed, or perhaps strange wolves to be howled at. You'd be surprised how often the audience howled back. Yasmin played the human hunter, come for our pelts. We never knew when she'd arrive, flashing her cymbals in a murder of sound. The terror of it. We'd all respond the exact same way every time, startled, urgent, springing up, bounding away. You cannot rehearse this unity, not exactly. You can only prepare your body as best you can to empty itself, to allow the wolf in. When we wear the masks, we become one, not just with the masks, with each other, a pack. Some of us weren't quick enough to escape Yasmin the hunter, the very young wolves who knew no better, the very old, too stiff to move. But some nights the weak ones did escape when the strong wolves stayed to fight. We never knew in any given performance of Los Lobos who would survive at the end, the wolves or the hunter. How many wolves would die? How many pelts the hunter would take? If the hunter would return bleeding and triumphant to her hut, or not at all. We were raided once during a Los Lobos performance, our last. We lost Javier that night. The priests took him, charged him with the usual crimes brought against actors, prostitutes, and bookies, unseemly exhibitions and extravagant acts of dissipation. No trial to speak of, but found guilty, sentenced to a term of incandescence. This did not necessarily mean execution. Had it been spring or autumn, Javier might have served his sentence and been released, starved, perhaps, filthy, certainly, and louse-ridden, but alive. But it was high summer, and so, under the leaden roofs of La Diosa's temple palace, Javier was sweated dead, like so many others. The priests hung his effigy, wolf mask and all, over the barred doors of the old Royal Theater in La Plaza de la Fe. Not that Javier had ever played there, nor any of us ever dreamed of it. It was a statement. The hunter would always come for the wolves. Beasts deserve no better. We had no plans to revive the Los Lobos project for Teatro Milagro. We wanted something new, something that ended in a feeling of luminosity, of tenderness. For how, we asked ourselves, could we live in this new light? We actors, yes, but we espadons too, from the hobgoblinish gutter snipes to the queen herself, if we did not publicly acknowledge and exorcise our cultural darkness, eh? We made it sound like a haunted house, a lark. Come to La Cámara de las Sombras. Run the gauntlet of your nightmares. Watch as your past sins take shape before your eyes. You will face them. You will move through them, beyond them, and out the other side into the light. At the end, a feast. We claimed publicly, brazenly, that Teatro Milagro would provide what previously only La Diosa could bestow. Ritual expiation for anyone brave enough to buy a ticket. What else was theater for? It was a hit, maybe too much of one. First, the picket line formed outside the warehouse re-rented when the workers left for the night. Crowds of protesters, faithful servants of La Diosa, alternating between shouting obscenities at us and interceding with La Diosa loudly on behalf of our souls. This behavior spiked the interest of those who'd had no interest in theater heretofore. Admission numbers and numbers of picketers swelled. Yasmin was excited, almost fierce with it. My stomach was old ropes dissolving in acid. Despite the Queen's new policy, Espada was still Espada. We were still actors. Priests were still priests. I remembered Javier. Man, prisoner, martyr, effigy. His wolf mask hung above my bed. I talked to it as I would a ghost. Last night, after that priest had showed up, I couldn't sleep for worry, no matter how Yasmin grinned. Let her glower. Nothing we're doing is illegal, not anymore. But of course, it was not Yasmin who was working the box office when the priest returned. This time she stood in the box office line, patiently awaiting her turn to buy a ticket. It was not long before we were face to face, only a wooden table between us. To call this table our box office when it is not in fact an office, nor do we have any box seats to sell, is one of our troupe's many eccentricities. But unabashedly pretending one thing is something else that it patently isn't, even when we don't need to, is a perk of our profession. So, said the priest, plunking down 3 copper coins onto my table, how does this work? When I didn't answer right away, she raised her eyebrows. I blinked up at her. I wished it were Yasmin's turn to work the box office. Gathering my wits, I said, audience members enter the vestibule, one at a time. You stand in darkness and speak your crimes. After a few minutes, a curtain will lift. You will walk through it. A guide will meet you and take you through your bespoke experience. Some people didn't make it past the vestibule. They couldn't bring themselves to speak their sins. We usually called them sins, but the word crimes slipped out of my mouth just now. It never had before. Very few demanded their money back. They just exited the way they entered and walked quickly away. But those who made it through the vestibule usually stayed for the whole show. They exited out the back of the building where little pasteles and cups of fruit juice awaited them. They were given washcloths and bowls of water to wipe their sweat and tears away, and a small fabric flower made from scraps of costumes too tattered to repair. I did not tell the priest any of this. I personally did not think she would make it through the vestibule. My best imaginings had her fleeing back through the entrance in shame and fear. My worst imaginings had her stalking through La Cámara de los Sombras, flinging open the back door and letting in La Familia's guard, who would then arrest all the actors in my troupe one by one and drag them out the back to the prison wagons, and I alone would be left outside with a growing line in front of me and a mob of angry picketers howling for my blood, and I would never know what became of my friends. The priest received the stamp on her hand that acted as her ticket. Why we call it a ticket instead of a stamp is another mystery of the theater. She examined it closely. A red wolf's head. Her mouth did something. She nodded a little. Her shoulders hunched, then straightened. Her eyes locked with mine as they had done last night, and her chin jerked. Then she disappeared through the door. I waited. Most experiences in La Cámara de los Sombras lasted about a quarter hour, but it could be longer if the individual audience member had much to confess. It was more than 15 minutes later when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Yasmin. Vega, she said, I'll take over. We need you for this one. She slipped a mask into my hand. She also kissed my cheek lightly. Yasmin's perfume always reminded me of raspberries. Strong heart, she wished at me, then sent me inside. The fact that it had taken the priest so long to confess told me that our forthcoming improv would be an elaborate one. The human imagination is a pageant. A parade of nightmares may take many shapes. The actors of Teatro Milagro, eavesdropping from the other side of the curtain, have only a few moments to prepare from the time a confessor concludes their list of sins to the time they step into La Cámara de los Sombras. I myself did not know what I was walking into. I did not need to for the role I played. In La Cámara de las Sombras, I only ever played one part. But I was curious. I liked to see my fellow actors work, so I pulled my mask on and my hood up. This, with my dark clothes, made me effectively invisible. I followed the priest quietly from the shadows, and watched her fears unfold. Hime and Amir were our main dancers, trained acrobats, who could create instant architectures from their twining limbs. Their bodies could roll and tumble like moving vehicles, royal carriage, cabbage cart, tumbrel of the condemned. They leapt through, swung from, and hung from aerial loops dangling from high rigs, each a portal or a window or a hellhole, depending on what was needed. Sometimes they were hordes of demons clinging to the hanging silks, swarming and soaring and scuttling with the agility of birds, of monkeys. Alejandra and Luz were older, less flexible, not as swift, but they carried a gravitas in their bodies that bound the eye fast. In their elastic expressions and deep gazes, the range of human emotion played out. Agony, fear, bitterness, desire, appetite, rage, defeat, despair. Guillermo acted both as guide and sound maker. The man could produce such noises from his body, percussive, shrill, resonant, flatulent, monstrous, and carried in the instruments enough to produce an even wider variety. He walked backwards, beckoning the audience onward through the moving scenes, and augmented the elaborate mimes with whatever soundscape he deemed appropriate. The priest's personal nightmare, so it seemed to me, was her last decade of obedience to religious superiors, while the faith that had once nourished and compelled her was slowly chipped away with every torture, imprisonment, and execution she carried out. The actors did not need to embody every victim, but all victims. The Gestalt, Yasmin would say. 5 bodies writhing together and a knot became 100, 1,000. They reached for succor with desperate arms and grasping nothing fell back, clawing at their prison walls, at each other, gasping for breath that was harder and harder to come by. Huddling into an ever tighter knot, they passed a single wan candle around. One by one, they tried to keep it alight, even as they themselves flickered out, fell back into shadow, until one frightened actor was left holding their faltering stub of candle, standing alone beneath the silks where 4 other bodies hung like limp moths in a spider web. The remaining actor, it was Luz, quickly thrust the candle into the priest's startled hands. Then the silks of the gallows seemed to drop down and loop around her like a python, hauling her towards the ceiling where she too dangled, broken, which was when I stepped out from behind the priest. Staring up at the dead, she seemed unaware of the hot wax falling into her hand. I was fully in front of her before she knew I was there. She caught just a glimpse of my mask before my hand shot forward, pinching the candle out. I never know what they see when they see me in the mask. When I am not wearing it, the mask looks like nothing much, a neutral face, slightly too elongated and too smooth to be quite human, finished in a shining black lacquer. I'd come across the mask in the sewers one evening a few years ago on my way to one of our forbidden rehearsals. I'd put it on to surprise my troupe. That didn't work out how I'd thought. 3 of them screamed and fled from me. 2 burst into tears and babbled like babies. 1 fainted, Javier, when he was still with us. Only Yasmin seemed to know it was me, for she came up quietly and said in her calm professor's voice, "You're frightening them, Vega. I do not think that is an ordinary mask. It is a very special mask, and you must only wear it for very special performances." She removed it gently, gingerly, and handed it to me at once as if it burnt her fingers. But her eyes were radiant with that too fierce excitement when she said, "I could almost believe in your goddess that such a thing fell into our hands." I do not wear the mask for every performance of La Cámara de los Sombras, only the ones where Yasmin deems it needful, only at the very end and only a glimpse. That's all it takes. Any more and they can break. And a broken audience member cannot come to our next show, can they? The priest had tucked her cloth flower between her 2 enameled hairpins. Her face yet had a gray pallor to it and a clammy sheen of sweat, for all that she had scrubbed herself vigorously with the washcloth we handed her. She clutched her cup of juice in one hand, her pastel in the other, but could not bring herself to eat or drink. She sat in the dry yellow grass behind the warehouse, looking out over the river that moved, murky and slow, through this industrial area of our city. I sat down beside her, cross-legged. She flinched slightly as if I was still wearing the mask. They always know somehow that it was me after. Even when I remove the mask and put it away in our box of props with all the others and am just Vega in my homespun clothes with my plain peasant's face. How are you feeling? I asked her. Her lips twisted. How am I supposed to be feeling? I shrugged. Is that it? She demanded. Am I clean now? Is all forgiven? I rested my chin on my shoulder and regarded her. What do you think? I think, she drew a deep breath. I think my mouth tastes like vomit, and I may have shit myself. That's normal. That's why we have a privy set up back there. I indicated the cup in her hand. The juice will help. Try it. She glanced warily at her drink, then downed it, shuddered at the sweetness. Some color returned to her face. Is there a word for it? What just happened? There was. Yasmin had taught it to me. It meant puking and shitting, yes. It also meant the other thing, the thing that was making the priest's hands tremble even now, that pressed like a warm palm to the center of her back, loosening her shoulders, that made her expression as wide open as a child's, where, as before, it was a stone wall. I smiled at her, full as tired as she and as full of wonder. Then I looked out again over the river. After a moment, the priest broke her pastel into 2 pieces and handed me one. We chewed together in silence, in the dark. Thank you.
That was gorgeous.
Thank you.
Isn't she amazing?
I've been wanting to write a theater story for so long, and I was so happy.
Both are. We've just had 2 pieces of art about art and about life and death, which are part of art, and art is part of them. So, okay, words are failing me. I'm starting to sound kind of dippy. Sorry.
So I'm like catching up with the chat, both of us immediately. I feel like we missed so much while we were reading.
Yeah. Thank you, chat. You all are wonderful.
What a great audience. Thank you for being here.
Everyone's been very engaged. Yes, we've been very fortunate in the audience we've had and in the stories and the readers we've had. Thank you both.
Thank you for inviting us, Laura.
Always such a great time.
We love having you here. I hope that you'll come back again and that Daniel will be with us next time.
Yes,
Yeah.
Daniel.
But he'll be able to see the recording, right?
What's that? Well, he will, but I like having him, here.
Sure. Also, note the time, 10:58. We're awesome.
Perfect. Yes. And I'll be back next week. Next week, we have another 2 readers. We have Alexander Danner and Julian K. Jarbo. I do recommend checking storyhour2020.com's day of the reading, just in case there are any changes. I think if enough people check, it doesn't change, Storyhour2020.com is also a good place to learn about upcoming readers and clear your schedule for whichever Wednesdays are most important to you. But if you do end up missing a reading, you can always go and watch it again on Facebook on the Story Hour page. You can watch this one as many times as you want. It's very useful. C.S.E Cooney and Carlos Hernandez, thank you so much for coming here tonight and sharing your stories with us.
Truly our pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's an
And
honor.
thank you, everybody watching.
Take more classes, Quinn. Long.
And thank you to Daniel Marcus. When you see this, Daniel, we miss you. Come back. And I'd like to thank all of you who are here now, all of you who are in the Facebook room, and all of you who are watching it some point in the future for joining us, because as long as you're here with us enjoying these stories, we're all together in the same story hour. Good night.